Recently, the GST Council in their 47th meeting have decided certain important modifications in the present Goods and Service Tax Act. I will consider these particular changes as a mini budget because these are having a far reaching impact on the persons who are dealing with such activities. The first important change that has been brought by the GST Council is pertaining to the GST levy on the tenants in itself. Now, those tenants who are registered under the Goods and Service Tax Act, if they are getting a residential dwelling unit for their residential purposes, then they will have to pay now additional 18% GST on the amount of house rent that they are offering to the landlord or landlady, as the case may be. Now, the words used in this particular connection are person, which means that the person can be, or the occupier or the tenant can be either an individual, the person can be a partnership, the person also can be a limited company, one man company, it could be an LLP, it could be a cooperative society, it could be a body of individuals, or it could be an association of person or any other assessee which is specified. So all these persons are covered under this new amendment that has been brought into effect from 18th of July 2022. Now these tenants which I am supposed to evaluate on, that these tenants must be registered under the GST law, either voluntarily or by way of a compulsion, because the turnover exceeding rupees 20 lakhs for services and goods and services above 40 lakhs. Even they are covered under the composition scheme also, they will be covered under this category. So those tenants who are registered under the provisions of the Goods and Service Tax Act, now henceforth from 18th of July 2022, now will have to pay 18% GST. Keep it in mind that this particular GST is not to be adjusted from the amount of rent that will be offered to the landlord or landlady. It is in addition to the rent that has been offered, because the provisions under the present law are on the reverse charge basis. The amount is required to be paid generally by the supplier in itself, but under this reverse charge mechanism now, the responsibility has been cast upon the tenant, the recipient of the service, to pay the GST. But note one point, now for the month of July, now the rent will have to be split into two parts. The rent from 1st of July to 17th of July, on which no GST is required to be paid. But from 18th July onward till 31st of July, the whatever rent that will be calculated, that rent will bear 18% GST, which is required to be paid either under the HSN code 9963 or 9972, as the case may be. Now, this has got a far reaching impact on the corporate houses, banking institutions, insurance institutions, including life insurance, because they are hiring out certain accommodations from landlords and giving it to their employees as a rent-free or rent-free unfurnished or rent-free at a concessional rate. So all these employees who are enjoying this particular benefit because of the tenancy which has been given to them by virtue of this particular clause. Technically, they are not the tenant, but the tenant should be the corporate houses or limited companies in itself. Since they are registered under the GST law, they will 18% additional GST to the landlords are concerned. Second important point that we need to understand here would be that there are certain professionals or certain businessmen who are residing in the house and the office is also in the same house. For example, take the case of a chartered accountant. Now this CA in the initial stages will have his office in the office as well as in the residence, as well as his office also will be there. So in these particular cases, the person, if it is registered under the provisions of the GST, then he will have to pay 18% additional tax, is the major important point which one needs to note. Now, there are certain persons who are never buying a house, but they are residing in a house constructed by others and taking that particular house on rental basis. Rather than spending few crores for constructing the house, they are only advancing the money to certain person, and these persons are constructing and hiring that particular house to the concerned entrepreneur or the traders, as the case may be. In such case, the amount will have to be paid. If the person is supposed to be registered or is registered, then in that case the amount will have to be paid at 18% on the amount of rent that is being offered by the tenant to the landlord. So in a nutshell, if you happen to be a registered dealer under the provisions of the GST, then you are supposed to pay 18% GST in addition to the rent from 18th of July 2022 onwards.